Well, thanks everybody for coming along on this lovely, beautiful day here in Mullagh. We're here, the yard we're in here this afternoon is the old bank house. It's owned by Marie Clark at the moment. I suppose in years ago my grandparents lived here, and my father and my uncles, and they were all born in this house. So they've lived here for until about 1963-64. And indeed I spent about, I think, I'm told by my mother, about 6 months living here as well with my dad and herself before we moved into their house up on the top of the hill there in Rose Hill. So it has a long history here in my own family, and we're hugely grateful to Marie and Cathal and their family for allowing us in here today, and thanks for you to coming along. But we're here today to talk to a gentleman who has very kindly agreed to come back to Mullagh, and it's not his first time in Mullagh, I can tell you that for sure. It's Sean Quinn from Minority, and Sean has Mullagh connections, which he's I think going to tell us about now. I think, Sean, your dad was born here in Mullagh.
Yes, my father was born up in Rose Hill, up in Killian's Park, up near the top of the lane there. That's where he was born, and I used to come here when I was young on holidays. And
your house was up in Minority, Sean, is that right?
I was living, yeah, we were living in Oakley Park at the time, up above Minority, 2 miles above Minority. And I used to be down here on holidays. That happened a lot that time. All the children were sent off someplace in the summer to give our mother a break. And you'd be sent off for a couple of weeks on holidays. Sometimes you might like it, sometimes you wouldn't, but you had to put up with it anyway until they got themselves back together again, and then you were brought home. But yeah, I have, I suppose, fond memories of Mullagh, really, years ago. I remember a lot of things about it.
Your father was one of how many, Sean, up there? You had a...
My father was one of 8, of a family of 8.
And your house was on the old Park Lane, isn't that right?
His house was on the old Park Lane. Yes, it was St. Killian's Park was the name of it, and he was their house. I think it was 3rd from the top.
Yes, from the Wellman Road.
On the Wellman Road, yes. And it was 3rd from the top on the right hand side. Yes. And yeah, I spent a lot of time around Mullagh that time. We used to. The milk was got over in Roundtrees and Rantav, and we used to go over with the can and get a couple of pints of milk every day. And there was nobody selling milk in the town of Mullagh at that time. There was no bottles, or let alone cartons. Yes. But that's the way life was in Ireland that time. Yes. Every place. But
you told me a story, Sean, when you were in school. You were in national school in Minority.
Yes, when we were in school in Minority, when I think it was either 5th class, or maybe 6th or maybe 5th, we used to have to write a composition every week. We get it usually on a Friday evening. The master would write it up on the blackboard. He'd put up on the blackboard some particular subject, and he'd ask us to write a composition on that. You'd have to write 3 or 4 verses, or as much as you could on whatever it was. If you knew a little bit about it, you'd probably maybe go 4 verses of it. But anyway, one time he asked us, he wrote up on the blackboard to do a composition on the Fair of Mullagh. And you see, when we were in school in Minority that time, on Fair Day of Mullagh, you'd see a lot of people walking up and down past the school with cattle, going to the fair and coming home, people after buying cattle and all of that. But anyway, we wrote this composition about it, and we also had a few lines about it, a couple of paragraphs maybe. But one man he was in the class above me at the time. Actually, he was a very good friend of mine. He was Nick Farley. They lived over in Ballinteeva at Minority. But they originally came from Cornikill. His father's home place was in Cornikill, and they lived down there for a good few years, and then they moved up to Ballinteeva. Their father bought a farm up there, and they moved to that, and then they came to Minority School. But Nick was in a class above me, and Nick was probably the only one in the class that really grew up with the fair and knew all about it because his father always had cattle and pigs and different things, and Nick was he was quite used to going to the fair of Mullagh. But anyway, he wrote a composition about it and he made a great job of it. So he had it to got up that morning bright and early and got the cattle out of the field and out on the lane and then up to the road and on down to Mullagh. It was a big job to get bringing them the whole way.
This was from Ballinteeve, or was it from?
From Ballinteeve.
From Ballinteeve, so it
yeah.
2 or 3 miles from.
Oh, it was about 4 miles, I suppose, from the town here to where they lived.
Yes.
And they brought the cattle down anyway and up on the fair green, and so you had to keep them together on the green. You see, you keep them separated.
I asked you that before. How would you keep cattle together on the green? Were they not all
No,
running with each
the
other?
funny thing about it, you see, cattle that time were very quiet and tame. It's not like today.
Yeah.
They were all reared probably on buckets.
Yes.
And once they walked from home to Mullagh together, they'd stay together then automatically. They'd stay in the one bunch.
Even though there might be about 500 people up
That's
there.
right.
Yes.
The whole green would be, you get it hard to get a space on the green to put your cattle.
Yes.
And it went on anyway, and they did sell their cattle, and sure, whoever bought them, probably some dealer, I think, that bought them. But anyway, the punchline of the story was we all thought it was very funny at the time. When the cattle was sold and his father got paid for the cattle, he said, we all went into the Tiddleys for our dinner. And so the schoolmaster, he wasn't a native of Minority. He couldn't understand this Tiddleys. Who were they? What was that? Was it the name of a restaurant or what it was? So anyway, it was very funny. So the whole classroom nearly died with the laughing. But
I think a good few people in this audience know where that was, I think.
the word I knew at the time because I heard it going on myself.
Yes.
And so Nick knew it too, but he thought it was quite a normal thing to say. But the master anyway brought him up to the top of the classroom and he had to explain the whole thing then about.
And tell me, I think there was a number of houses around Mullagh at this time that during a fair day that would convert themselves into a restaurant or an eating house, I think they were called.
There was, yeah. There was a lot of houses doing food at the time, and one of them that I remember quite well was, it was, at the time we called her Lizzie Gig, and it was the far side of the street where Paddy Riley lived after, and she she turned her house into a restaurant that day. And the reason I knew about it was because my granny used to work in it. And I used to go into her shop for a drop of tea when I'd be in the town, you see. And she worked in it anyway. And truthfully, the main menu on the day was herrings, because at that time Friday was a fast day. And Mullagh Fair was always on a Friday. And so I used to be amazed looking at these fellas. These men, they'd eating herrings and they'd eat the bones, they'd eat the whole lot. I never could understand it. But that was one house that was doing food. But then there was more houses in the town now, like as I said, the Tiddleys, which is only up here a little bit. It was doing the food as well, but I think there was a couple of more as well.
I think Farrelly's across the road from Smith's.
Bernard Farrelly's, yeah, they did. Well, theirs was, I think, was a more up-to-date restaurant, really.
It might have been a 3-star.
I think it was a 3. It wasn't a 5, but it was a 3 in comparison with the rest of them.
Yes.
But you see, they just converted that kitchen for the day, and they cooked the food and the. Sure, it was great. There was no problem. Sure, it was grand. But then, of course, Mullagh was a very. It wasn't just all about the fair. Like Mullagh was a fair day in Mullagh was more of a kind of a social day out for a lot of people, because everybody went to the fair regardless. You didn't have to be a farmer selling cattle or buying cattle to go to the fair. Like nearly all the women around the country went to the fair as well, and it was a day out.
I think there was
And
you spoke about music and musicians.
That's
and
right. There
people
was,
at the fair.
I always remember it. There was one man. He was Boylan was his name. He was a red-haired fella, and he'd be always around the street, up here a little bit, around. He was always knocking around where the hotel is now. It was Delia Lynch's pub at the time, and he used to play an accordion and sing, and he'd be there the whole day. And I don't know whether he collected money or not. He probably went in and out to the pubs and got a few drinks. He was from up around Wilkinstown direction. But he was a great musician and a great player. He had red wavy hair. I always remember him and him playing and singing the few old songs. And then up the street further you had a harness maker there selling horses' harness and every kind of harness, you know. And there was.
And tell me, there wasn't just cattle that were at the fair. There was sheep and pigs. Not so many sheep, I think.
Not so many sheep, but there was sheep at it too, around down at this end.
Yes.
And then up further on the far side, up around Paddy Smith's shop, there was pigs there, and there'd be carts backed into the footpath, and they'd have pigs, young pigs. They called them suckers at the time, and then they'd have pork pigs as well. And all that type of thing. There was everything. There was a good lot of cattle, really. The green should be packed with cattle, you know.
And tell me, when the dealers had come, you told me a story about you driving cattle for a neighbour of yours, Isaac Roundtree, I think was.
That's right. One time Isaac Roundtree asked me, well, he asked me father would he let me go with him. We were working in Isaac Roundtree's house at the time.
Yes.
And the night before the fair, Isaac asked me father would he let me go with him the next morning to the fair. And Isaac had a lot of cattle up there, and he had a worksman that worked with him all the time. He was with him 7 days a week at the time. He nearly lived with them. He lived over a little bit the other side of the village, but the village of Minalty. So that morning, I had to be up in Roundtree's bright and early. I had to be up at 7 o'clock.
What age would you have been at that
I
stage?
probably was about maybe 16 at the time, okay. 15 or 16. I wasn't long working anyway. But I had to go bring my bicycle, go on the bicycle and be above early. But it was in the springtime of the year, and the cattle were after being fed for the winter in a shed. And they called them stall fed, you see. There was no slatted sheds that time. Roundtree's had a lot of land, and they would have a lot of cattle, and there was a big shed in the yard, a real old building, a real old shed, and the cattle were in a row down along the whole shed, and them tied to a manger, tied with chains. They were there the whole winter, and they'd be fed with hay and turnips and all that type of thing. And they would be in great order, but anyway, Isaac knew the ones that were fit for the fair, and he went along and he picked out 7 or 8 cattle and got them out, and we got them out on the road. And before we got to Minalty, they were nearly going mad, and once we got as far as Minalty or through the village, then they started slowing down. They started getting tired, but
more manageable.
Yeah, they were easier to manage. But anyway, I was on the bicycle going around watching gates that might be open and things like that. And the cattle, you see, were tied in all winter, and they were sitting. It was really for all the water, like the way they used to keep the cows tied. They'd be up on a high bank along a high part in the shed, and then there was a channel then for the manure that they used to keep cleaned out. But the cattle would still be very mucky and dirty from lying it in. There might be straw under them and there might not, but we were going down the road anyway, and I said to Terry Carolan, the man that was working with Isaac, I said, he'll never sell these cattle today, I said, with the appearance of them. I said, they're in an awful looking state with muck and everything after lying in all winter. And he said, oh no, he said, them are the ones that they'll go mad for, he said. They'll know, he said, that they were in all winter, and they'll know they were well fed.
Well, there were no fools there.
No fools, and they would have been well fed anyway, but we brought them down and got them up, and that was the one worry I had the whole way down. I said, how are we going to manage these or keep them together? because Isaac wasn't a very excitable man. It was down to the two of us to keep them together, but we drove them up on the green and kept them round in a ring.
And tell me, you told me about the long straight into Mullagh, that you'd be met by some
That's
of the tutor
right.
dealers that'd be out trying to suss out the
Yes,
cattle that were approaching the town.
once we came to within view of the town, the dealers started walking out the road to see what was coming in and what kind of cattle, and they probably done every road, but that road, the minority road, was probably the most important one for them, because, well, they knew up that area there was probably going to be good cattle coming from it anyway, and they'd be looking, you see, and then they'd keep after you until we got on the green, and as soon as you got to the grid, then you could see them knocking around. They were looking to see who owned them or who were they going to have the deal with to buy them. But yeah, we were on the green maybe for an hour or more before the deal was made with them, and then they were sold, and we hung around for a while, and then when we were finished, we were a little bit like Nick, but we didn't go to the Tiddleys, but we went to another very reputable lady in here, Delia Lynch, and the two boys, Isaac and Terry, the workman, they had a few whiskies, and I got a cup of tea and a few sandwiches. But it was a great day out. Like, I spent most of the day around the town and then went home on the bicycle. But
I think Delia was delighted to see Isaac.
Delia was delighted with Isaac because she knew him. Yeah. Isaac, yes, he would be down in Mullagh, and he always went into Delia, and he'd get a few half ones with her. And Mullagh, the fair in Mullagh it was a social outing. That's what it was. Like, I mean, a whole day people came to it and stayed a few hours and went around, and I suppose all the pubs would be full of people that time. I mean, the town would be packed with people. It was a great place, really.
You enjoyed your days out in it?
I enjoyed my days. I used to love the fair. Then if you'd go up the town, and there used to be a fella down the far side, up where John Joe Lynch's pub. It was Ned Connor that time, and there used to be a man there selling timber. He'd have selling wooden troughs for feeding pigs and feeding cattle, and he'd have wooden gates and all different things made out of timber. I don't know where he came from, but he'd have a load of stuff there, and people would be buying it. There was nothing else. There was very little stuff made out of steel that time.
Yes. There's all kinds of craftsmen there selling their wares
there
for
was,
the
yes,
agricultural community.
Oh yes, it was all in connection with agriculture. Then of course there was another man there, he used to sell clothes, and you'd see him there fitting jackets and fellas, and he'd be selling shorts and all of this.
Was that man's name Mickey the Rope?
He was Mickey the Rope, and
yes.
I think whether he was the one Mickey the Rope the whole time, or whether there was a different fella who used to come, and he was a new Mickey the Rope, but that's what Arshel listened, it was unreal. Yeah. But it was a day out, and that was it, you know.
Well, thanks very much, Sean, for coming along and sharing all your memories with us here.
Yeah.
As you can see, it's a really hard job interviewing Sean. You'd throw in the ball, and we could be here tomorrow. But it's fabulous, and I had a lovely evening with Sean sitting down in his house, and these stories just kept coming and coming and coming. And it's wonderful to have you here in Mullagh again, Sean.
Yeah, but you see, there came dealers from every part of the country, especially up the country. And they'd buy the cattle here on the fair green, and sometimes they might try and buy them on the road on the way in.
And would they sell them again when they come in?
No, they'd bring them home.
Yeah. How did they bring them home?
They used to walk them from here over to the Virginia Road station.
Right, that's over at the forge.
Over at the forge, and they'd put them on the train there.
Yes.
There'd be a special train on for the fair day in Mullagh, and they'd put them on the train there, and then they'd go off from that to Drogheda.
Yes.
But
you were saying to me they didn't export cattle then.
There was no export for cattle that time. Sure, it was all the home market that time. You know, like It's different now for by then. I mean, that time we were only able to feed our own people in Ireland now, so there's that much, exports have got that strong now in Ireland that we are feeding nearly the half of the world. Our exports is going every place all over the world now in the line of milk powder and cheese. Butter, everything is being exported now, cattle especially, an awful lot of cattle.
Yes.
But yes.
Well, again, thanks very much, Sean, and thanks for coming along to listen to.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
We just wanted to make a small little presentation, if I can find it among all of this behind me, just to Sean, as a small little thank you, Sean, for coming along.
Eamon, you can't afford to die and the knees out of your trousers. What?
Oh, I'll find this in a minute, Sean.